Hey guys, it's Matt. All right, this is the big one. God, religion, etc., all that stuff. I'll probably lose some people, but if I didn't give you exactly what I believed in this area, I should lose everybody. If I held something back because I don't want to piss off a certain group, I should lose everybody. So this book is the culmination of my belief set about how reality works and our place in it, developed over 14 years plus the balance of my life on top of that. So this is my honest opinion on big religion and things like that. It gets into it maybe 10 minutes in here. It doesn't start right away. I don't talk in any way about Jesus. I don't know who Jesus was. It's ignorant for me to come and say Jesus was this or Jesus is not that and you're being fooled. I don't know who Jesus was. I don't talk about it. It's not because I'm afraid to talk about it to piss people off. Generally, the message here, it's not blasphemous. There's a few jokes, but you know what I think? I don't understand the big infrastructure. I think all the big infrastructure is of man. If you want to have a relationship with your God, I don't understand why that's not done in the backyard under a tree. Okay, that's generally the message. There's a lot more to it that I'm going to present here, or why listen, right? But that's generally the main point. Like a presentation of a pope, for example, I just don't understand that. To think someone is closer to your God than you are, I don't get it. So with that said, chapter 7. The word gut feeling has been carried through time for a reason. Gut feeling. This isn't a stuffed Lenin, in my opinion. I think real people were responsible for carrying this one, because instinctively, real people know the brain is not the only source of knowledge. Gut feeling is a channel to information that comes from a place that could only be described as somewhere else. This society has taken your ESP, your second sight, and other magical powers, and hidden them between Rosie O'Donnell's butt cheeks. However, what we still have access to is incredibly powerful if it can be awakened and accessed. You have to learn to let it out. Many of you have been saying, for some reason, since I started walking this general path of truth, I do feel more powerful than these buffoons who the world news tells me are important. All these supposed big shots seem like cartoon characters to me now. Years ago, I thought Elon Musk was cool. Now he seems kind of like a retard. Gut feeling is always correct if you can interpret it properly. In time, your sensory powers will expand. The people called the masses don't work on training this intuition because they don't think it even exists. In my opinion, letting this part of them go soft is the primary reason they take the download. They have no armor against it, mostly because they don't even believe in the armor itself. I use the term real people a lot. That to me just means that it's a true spiritual being that has a part of itself or a connection out of here. There are other types here, a minion class, or if the NPC exists, or even other types, may not have the same root out as what I would say the real person does. So most real people don't make the hard choices we are making. It's not like if you're real, they're walking this path of truth. I think inside this bucket of real people, we're a tiny, tiny little group. They don't make the tough choices. They go along to get along. They want to audition to become the Borg. They play it safe or lose their way. Many people in Hollywood, for example, or they go into Congress, many of them may be real people. We have the tendency to just believe, though, that's the minion class. No, that's mostly real people, but simply people that have lost their way, abandoned the spiritual side that they once had. Some of these lost people, Pinocchios who have returned to wood, may someday be able to redeem themselves and have potentially the chance to do what we are doing now. Remember what Molly Ringwald said to Ted in the movie 16 Candles? You could come back next summer as a completely normal person. Yeah? I'd like to extend that same sentiment to minions like Obama. Hey, Barack, in a few thousand years, you could come back to Earth as a completely normal person. Now, isn't that great news, Barack? Matt, you said in the last chapter you weren't going to run them down. I'm trying to do better, but I'm going to continue to run them down. Barack, in this life they made you president, and you believed you were a big shot. You know what, Obama? You were not a big shot. You were a teleprompter repairman. As president, you were about as believable as Ray Charles in the Annie Oakley show. This life on earth is a spiritual gym and workout center, and its tools and machines must be used the right way. We get the sense that some actors in Hollywood are more real than others. For example, what does your inner knowing tell you about Alec Baldwin? Is Jared Kushner, Ivanka's husband, the same as you, the same type of spiritual incarnation? Of course not. I hear they're shooting another Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie where Jared plays himself, coming off the mothership at the end of the movie with his family of Greys. Matt, I've been listening since Chapter 1. Is this some kind of new Tom Cruise religion that you're peddling? No, this is not some kind of new Tom Cruise religion, and I'm not peddling anything. I'm simply waking up your subconscious mind to bring forth a certain realization that comes from inner knowing. It's about remembering who we really are and what we came here to do. Our adversary has successfully hidden that knowledge from most people. We are the few that have the chance to break free from it. Most people believe they are their job. They believe they're their beach house, their pronoun. The ego mind and the part of the brain that, quote, thinks in English, has been a servant of our adversary. It must be retrained to work for us. We must use the rational brain while we live on earth. It's necessary, of course, but then find the channels to bypass it when we need to and draw knowledge from other parts of us or even from other places in the universe. No real truth is spawned from the part of us that thinks in the spellcraft of English. That part of the brain carries too much bias. Even in people like us who are breaking the mold, the thinking frontal lobes of the brain are still at least partially brainwashed. When discovering the highest truth, the rational mind is only useful to serve as a translator for the information that is allowed to spring forth from the gut and the heart. This thing here, our adversary, via its trick, has closed off our pathways, and we must work hard to open them back up again. Society has trained the ego mind to hide the real you from you. The main job of society is to hide the highest truths from real people. The ego mind has been trained to be a double agent, in a sense. In most people, it works for the system that lays down the trick. Most people's ego does not work for the spiritual you. It works for our adversary. Our own ego takes society's lead and helps hide your power from yourself. We'll talk more about ego later. It is necessary, but it has to be taught to play for the right team. As we've discussed in the past, and probably the greatest news of all time, society, or the screen reality, can't doom the spiritual you directly. It recruits many agents to assist it in laying down its master trick. Its agent closest to you and most influential is yourself, your own ego and the parts of your brain that are motivated through society's rewards and the pursuits of the lower chakras. In most people, quote, ego and the thinking brain have become foot soldiers for this material plane, working against your spiritual self. In a man, ego fosters a distorted belief set and promotes a penis drill sergeant. Your ego and its penis drill sergeant have been trained since your birth at the Paris Island Training Center of our adversary. The dick should be just a small prop in this grand play called life, but in most men, it has become the elder wand. Remember, we can't be perfect here. There's no need to go live in a cardboard box or to be celibate, but look around society to see how much the lower chakras, say, dominate the entire culture. This whole identity thing, oh my God, of alphabet soup and whatever non-binary is and all these names and stuff from the book here I can't read, but it's in the book and I'm looking at it right now. We'll skip. All the other nonsense. It's about focusing real people on the physical, which by default moves them further away from the spiritual. Every group on earth right now is being trained to identify with the material plane in a slightly different way. The alphabet people in that presentation is simply the most obvious and overt example. All this being said, may be giving you the wrong impression of what I think the ego is and how important it is, how necessary. It should not be treated like an enemy. It's absolutely essential in this very difficult place. With training, it will fall back in line to serve the whole of us. The ego is just a prodigal son that's gone bad, had some bad advice, some poor training, bowed down to the wrong things. It needs to rejoin the family. Come on, ego. Come on back home, buddy. Come on up here and give mommy a big kiss. That sort of shit. It's just the ego must be broken like a horse to serve the whole of you. A repeating theme in this book is we don't have to be perfect. The world is a merger of heaven and hell. This is a conjunction place of heaven and hell. They will never be able to stamp out all the heaven. Absolutely not. Most people in our truth community are angry researchers who feel they've got to go out and fight the enemy. Well, they never do go fight it, but they talk a lot about it. They're into the blame game and don't see people like Melvin as role players. Most truthers have lost their way. This is the very reason for BitChute, for example, and other platforms, to exasperate the fear addiction and foster the need to go fight it, the exact energy it craves, while encouraging, quote, blaming to remove personal responsibility. Constantly screaming, this place is hell. This is a rigged game. It's hijacked. That's a loser's attitude. We know that now. 100%. That's the game it wants truthers playing. Per the rules here, real people can always find the heaven if they seek it. One of the major goals summarized on the last page of this book is to be able, in the challenge of finding the heaven amongst the hell, and amongst all the hell being produced daily in this world, like the Lucy episode in the damn chocolate factory. That's what they produce. Here come the chocolates. Here come the chocolates. Eat them, eat them, eat them. Here comes the hell. Here comes the hell. Lucy has the power to turn the damn conveyor belt off. We don't realize that. The heaven is always here. This is part of how this reality works. Matt, speaking of that, you don't think that episode is like a truth drop, right? Lucy as Lucifer, and the chocolate factory, the hell just keeps being produced, and she doesn't realize she has the power to shut the conveyor belt on. The chocolates represent the hell. The dark, stinky hell keeps coming. But what does she have to do? Keep shoving it in her mouth the way this society wants people to shove the hell in their mouth and take it in as chocolates, which is a representation of the 7 deadly sins. In this case, gluttony. She keeps shoving it in her mouth. Yeah. Could be. Who cares? Is this reality, this weird-ass thing, capable of making that some sort of truth drop with Lucy as Lucifer? Of course it's capable. I wouldn't put all my chips there on the roulette number, but yeah, it's possible. Who cares? And could you imagine if this is the first video that my mother ever listened to? She would have me committed. Let's move on. Putting this tiny train stop called life into perspective is what's important. Understanding the whole of you and getting it all to work together is what's important. The second part of our journey comes after this realization, and that's the much harder part. That is doing the work and how to use this place and use this life in the way it was meant to be used for spiritual betterment for the whole of you. I don't like the word enlightenment, as you probably know, and I almost never use it. It implies one perfect moment where you may start to glow and float up in the air with a heart on. The word enlightenment is probably a crafted not-milk deception. I haven't even introduced not-milk yet in this book. I got to remove this. People reading this for the first time, what the hell was that? What did he just say? I'm going to keep going. What we are doing is a process that takes 15 to 20 years in most people. It's not going to happen quick, this word enlightenment. Gathering small wins and fostering understanding each day, every hour, is the opposite of the promise of enlightenment. The work will take place each and every moment of our lives, right until the moment of our death. Although I must call it work, it's mostly fun. The word enlightenment sounds like a diet ice cream to me. Is this another false promise of Buddhism? When's this enlightenment? How will I know? Well, you'll know when you're enlightened. You'll know. How will I know? You'll know. Maybe you'll get the ring around the rosies will pop out like the rashes in the plague. You'll know. No, I'm here to do the work every day. I'm expecting no enlightenment as I walk around the corner. It ain't light, this work. This life is heavy work. It ain't ever going to get light. I ain't expecting it to ever get light. It's going to get heavier. This reality is going to get more difficult. These creeps are going to get even stranger as things go. Okay, it's all part of the deal. Bring it on, Seal said. Bring it on, no problem. Enlightenment is another false grail quest. Here comes one perfect moment at some point where you'll walk around the corner and become enlightened, where our lives will be changed forever. No, this will never come in this place. That's not defeatist. That's the opposite of being defeated. Fuck your enlightenment. I'll work hard every day and know that even on the day of my death, I still needed to learn more. Couldn't possibly get it all done. The key is to be completely confident you've done enough. If I had to have a good workout at the gym, and it's been a long time, trust me, I ain't in no fitness shape. I know I could go do another set, but I don't need to do another set. I know I've done enough. That we've used the world for what it's here for, not to take regret into the moment of death and call forth the karma kraken. Tell them what they've won, Johnny, for taking a lifelong study of Buddhism into the moment of death. Just before, sir, are you dead yet? No, not yet. You're a lifelong Buddhist. Yeah, I'm a lifelong Buddhist. Do you think have you become enlightened? What's the day you became enlightened? Raise your head up if you can. I don't think I did. Oh, so why don't you call forth the karma kraken right now? Tell him what he's won, Johnny. A 40-day experience into the wonderful bardos, and then right back into another body because you manifested on yourself. This time you'll be living in the slums of Delhi. Part 2, the work, is much harder than the initial revelation of seeing through the trick and the process of waking up. Most people won't even get part 1 done. Most of the truth community, first-grade truthers, won't even get through part 1, be stuck in their little loops and cycles and blaming secret societies. 5 years ago, I thought seeing through the trick was all there was. I thought I had won. I even used the word like we're all winners. I was not even close. I apologize. That was only part 1. Yeah, we all see through the trick now. Great. Let's stop and pat ourselves on the back. Oh, we got a lot more to do. 95% more to do. That was the easiest part. Now, what does spiritual work mean? That sounds kind of dumb and touchy-feely. Many will scream, New Age! That's New Age, dude! They'll do that because it makes them feel good. I agree. A lot of this sounds a little hippie. Sorry, society didn't create no good words to foster this type of conversation. I'm doing the best I can. So when it gets a little confusing, what do? We stop, we back up to the absolute basics and keep it simple. There are 2 parts to people in a body. There's the physical side with its penis drill sergeant and its genital generals. And then there's the other side of the Vitruvian man. There's the timeless or spiritual side. Think of Lou, if you want, from Back to School. Lou is nice and he's tough, right? You're going to say it again, Matt? Yeah, I'm going to say it again. He put one son through college and another son he put through a wall. He's nice and he's tough. We are 2 parts, the material, the spiritual. Our adversary works to foster one side while cutting off the Vitruvian man's arm on the other side. So it always boils down to the same one paragraph, the entire reality. Doing the spiritual work simply means, what can we do now in this life, in this body, to benefit both parts at the same time? In most people, the other part has been tied to a chair, pushed into the corner, and duct tape had been shoved in over its mouth and a sock in its mouth. That's what the spiritual is in most people. But that's the part that sent us all here. That's not very respectful. That part of you bound and gagged in the corner, your spiritual side, it wants to benefit from your life experience too. You're an aspect of it. It's saying, if you just are all proud of your pronoun, it's sitting up tied in the corner with its mouth duct tape saying, well, I don't get nothing out of that if you're proud of your pronoun. I want to benefit too. What can you, Matt, don't you got bullet point so I know exactly how to serve it? No, you have to figure out how to serve your spiritual side. It can be, if you're walking by flowers outside in the damn landscaping, but you're rushing into a meeting and you stop, you say, I'm going to smell the roses. Literally, that's the spiritual work. It probably benefits. If you get into your meeting and run into your meeting with your BlackBerry or whatever, that don't exist for 20 years, it doesn't benefit. No, I don't got bullet point for you as to how to serve the spiritual side. You have to reflect on it and understand what it needs. Whacking yourself off all day, I assure you, it don't get anything out of that. Of course, becoming a spiritual winner on earth will never be supported by society's metrics of success. If you receive an A grade from this world, then you've probably spiritually failed. If you have spiritually won, then society will cast you out. It's that simple. Is this why the phrase, you can't have your cake and eat it too, has been carried through time as a stuffed Lenin? Cake, maybe, is what's handed out when one seeks residence deep under the dragon's wing. Think about a $100 million law firm that specializes in slip and fall. Those creeps. They have their cake, hey, they got front row seats anywhere they want. They got their Lamborghinis or whatever they do, but I doubt their spiritual side can eat. Of course their spiritual side can't eat. It's duct taped in the corner with its hands tied behind its back. They're waiting for the gimp to come up the steps, open the damn Bilko doors. As usual, there's always great news for real people. There is a light in real people that can never be fully extinguished by whatever this thing is, our adversary. Most people, it's pretty lim. Pretty lim. That's like a Freudian slip for limp. It's dim in most people, okay? But it can't be fully extinguished, even the most brainwashed and zombie-like of your family. Any sort of real people during their lifetime has the opportunity to sense that these two sides of them exist. And the one side here that we call spiritual needs to be satisfied in some way. Well, our adversary here knows us better than we know ourselves. It knows that itch will need to be scratched in real people someday, so it's gotten ahead of us. It has provided the $100 billion back scratcher of big religion. I understand there are a lot of Christians here and other religions. I will do this as respectfully as I can. I'm fascinated why people feel the need to seek their God through a religious infrastructure instead of simply doing it themselves, sitting under their favorite tree. To me, big religion is simply a creation of man. It asks you to give your power away and teaches you that you must work to please a God for a passing grade, and that it, the religious infrastructure itself, is a needed part in getting you that passing grade. It positions itself as the middleman, or its priest, or its pope. They're needed for you to get your passing grade from its perspective. Don't understand that at all. And everyone should abandon it. Go lie under a tree and worship your God. At the end of life, you may have performed well enough to get a reward, the religious infrastructure tells you. That's ridiculous to me. Why would a real God, the creation of all, need to be worshipped? Why would it even want to be worshipped? Only something with an ego would need that. Most people who research truth, like we do, come to realize that all of society and culture is a lie of some kind. But somehow they place their big religion aside as the only thing here that's not been corrupted. Looking to a giant infrastructure like the Catholic Church, for example, as one example, not just picking on the Catholic Church, almost every religion forms itself into a massive infrastructure, with few exceptions. But they'll position themselves, whatever the infrastructure may be, as this is your ticket to heaven. And you need us to get... That's just crazy to me. I don't get it. Seek, one last time, seek heaven and your God on your own. What the heck is all the money for? What is all the buildings for? What's the infrastructure for? The Pope is not closer to God than a normal person, but the Catholic Church will proclaim that. You've got to be kidding me. Apply the rule of opposites. It means he's lesser. The Catholic Church will tell you that he's more holy, more closer to God than the man on the street. It's incredible to me. Who would buy that? Remember how everything in this world is, well, I can't even say it. I'll just say ass backwards. If the world says he's more holy than your Uncle Ralph, per the rule of opposites, I think that means he's less than Uncle Ralph where it counts. The Pope sits on the blank, 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 I can't even say, and eats his Subway sandwiches just like you do. What does that mean to be holy, H-O-L-Y? I see the word whole, H-O-L-E, in that word, not W-H-O-L-E or whole. If the Pope is holier than thou, then he has more spiritual holes, H-O-L-E-S. And that boat don't float on the Tiber. It's no coincidence H-O-L-E whole and W-H-O-L-E whole are opposite meanings, but they sound exactly the same as homophones, if that's not discriminatory to say. Reality plays these word games in thousands of different places intentionally, and H-O-L-E whole and W-H-O-L-E whole may be just another one in a long list. If you're holy, you're not whole. This society generally puts forth that one must pick the right religion, and for those that choose wrong, they go to hell or receive some sort of punishment. Most of the punishments are pretty nasty. Does that make any sense to you? In cosmic terms, this life is like a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a billionth second long in cosmic terms compared to all that there is. How could my eternal fate after this be linked to what I do here for such a short period of time? But somehow most religions says your eternal future depends on this tiny little blink. We have so many limitations in this body, but they tell me my entire future is based on what I do here in one lifetime in this broken down vehicle? For crying out loud. Once I reached age about 12 or 13, all I wanted to do was jerk myself off all day long. Yeah, I ran back home from the public pool every single day. Some of those high school girls down there were like Aphrodite incarnate to me and my skinny ass. Go watch the pool scene in The Sandlot, but it was much more perverted than that. We're low creatures here on earth. It's okay to admit that. That's part of the experience. The gods of religion judge our passing grade and the awarding of Charlie's golden ticket on what's done in a single lifetime? What? Well, for the first how many years we're so stupid, and then we get stupider and are older. There's this little part in the middle we're supposed to do everything right for our God. What? Look, I've had some strange job interviews. See this life as a job interview from a religious perspective. I've had some weird ones, job interviews. I never had one where the employer stopped me right as the moment I walked through the door. Hold it right there. What? Turn around. Me? Turn around, sir? Yeah, turn around. Now pull up your pant legs so I can see your socks. What? Just do it. You want this job? I don't like your socks. Get out. But I didn't even get a chance to talk to you. Sorry, son. Socks tell me all I need to know about a man. So this life can tell your God all he needs to know about you? But Matt, God is God. He only would need one lifetime or a small part. Well, in the Bible it says God knew you, before making you in the womb, God knew you or knew you before you were born. What's the lifetime even for if God knew you before you were born? I'm not making that up. It's what it says in the Bible. The need to pick the right religion doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't line up with basic common sense either. It's like going to a Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors. That's an ice cream store in the United States. Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors, I think, if it's still around. It's like going in the damn store and a strange employee pops up from behind the counter, kind of like Brad in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but without the pirate hat. The employee says, this is God in this example. I'm sorry, I'm not meaning this to be blasphemous, but this is God in this example. I have to have a very basic and rudimentary example. So the being approaches you and says, in this ice cream shop called Old Tasty Mint, I am God. I am master of all that is cooled by my refrigeration. Now, one of these ice cream flavors in front of you is my favorite. If you pick my favorite ice cream and you serve it to yourself while praising me while you eat it, you go to heaven for eternity. And if you don't pick the right flavor, I'll cast you down into this tub of rocky road and turn your wife to salt. I'm sorry, it's basically what collective modern religion is putting forth. You can tell me about religions that say if you don't pick ours, you're still good. Is that really something that's common? I don't think so. You better pick the right flavor of ice cream out of these hundreds of tubs. That's high stress, dude. I don't know what the Buddhists and Muslims are like in this regard. I never spent no 7 years in Tibet. All I know is what I've been around my entire life and observed. Most of my family is Catholic. I've been in and out of the Catholic Church. Midnight Mass, Christmas, weddings, funerals, First Communions, blah, 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 blah. They're not very tolerant in this regard. Oh, all these other religions? Oh, they're just fine if they pick their own. No, you better pick our ice cream flavor or you're cast into the rocky road. I'm pretty sure I paid good attention. My uncle, I never remember him saying, oh, these Hindus over here at the Hindu temple, Krishna, Vishnu, Brahma, oh, they're fine. From our perspective, they're just fine. God will accept them as well. They're just a little misguided. They'll have to do some after-school work or like summer school, but they're not good. And from at least from my family, the way they interpret their Christianity and Catholicism, these other religions, no, they ain't very good. If their wife gets turned to salt, that would be one of the better punishments. Now, regarding the number of years that I've been doing this, I can't tell you how many times somebody has come forth and said, Matt, why don't you serve Jesus? Certainly by now you see that Jesus is the way out. Can you imagine how many times people have brought this to me? And many of these people are gone from this channel because they're just tired of, I'm not going to come around. They see that I won't, and they go elsewhere because it is necessary for them for my viewpoints on the creeps or what is happening as being presented through CNN to be in line with their religion. The Christians that are still here, okay, I appreciate your big thinking. Our view of how we see the creeps and the positioning of this world does not, in your opinion, have to be in line with your religion or you wouldn't be here, of course. Just this week, this is in no way a joke, I received a long email explaining that it's likely, very likely, I'm possessed. I'm not joking. This few days ago, I'm likely possessed, it said, and I need to seek help, like some sort of exorcism, immediately. Now look, I'm sorry, But I'm not even close to coming around to anything that even resembles a religion or Christianity. I'm not even close. One reason for that, amongst a few others, is I've never received a common sense answer to anything I've ever put forth, like the stuff I just talked about. How could all of our eternal future be based on a tiny little lifetime that's like 1/1000th of a second to the 100th power, considering all that there is? And there's never a good answer that's ever come back to me. Don't you see that that's potentially a problem? Matt, you're supposed to just give your life over to Jesus without the answers to your common sense questions. Why? I would think the God, the creator of the universe, would be like, well, that one's actually thinking for himself. I applaud that one. The few conversations I've had in person with people, and even with loved ones or an uncle or a girlfriend, it didn't go very well. In other words, these people saying, Matt, why don't you, are a Christian like the rest of us, or like my one girlfriend was, what do I do? Of course, start asking these common sense questions. And they hate it. Like they can't answer the questions. Nobody has been able to answer my questions for the 25 or 30 years I've been asking them. So one was my uncle, and it was at Thanksgiving. Matt, everything with you happens at the Thanksgiving table. We weren't at the table. People were mulling around here and there. Someone was serving little pigs in blankets or whatever. They're having this religious conversation. I'm kind of not really in it, but I'm listening, and I'm kind of sitting there. So I put it out to my uncle, who's a staunch Catholic. What a horrible word that is, staunch. But nevertheless, it's appropriate. I mean, hardcore Catholic. I said, well, what about other religions, Uncle? What about the person in India or in Cambodia that's never even heard about a pope? Where are they? What's your answer for that in terms of where they're going, in terms of heaven? And he had no answer, so he immediately gets like really angry at me. You just want to cause trouble. You come here, you'll cause trouble. There's no common sense answer. So the knee-jerk answer has to be like screaming back at me and getting very angry. Now, the girlfriend, it was very Christian, but much more evangelical Christian, very tiny church. This was in my mid-20s. I said to her the same thing. I said, well, what about all, has always been my number one question, asking everybody my number one problem. I have some other issues now. What about all the other religions? 1 billion Buddhists, 1 billion Hindus. There's hundreds of other religions in the world that are lesser known, and what they don't know, they've heard of Jesus, but they're not going to just bow down to Jesus, all these other people around the world. What happens to them? They go into hell? And she said to me, this was her best response back to me. I'm not trying to belittle, and this is what I've been told. This is what's formed my opinions over the years. These are real life experiences and conversations I'm sharing with you. Well, Matt, you're not talking to the right people. Well, maybe not. I'm open, but I'm just telling you this last one and we'll move on. She says, well, everybody in their life has the opportunity, will eventually be presented with Jesus Christ as the Savior, she said to me, or the way out. So I said back to her, so everybody in the world at some point in their lives will have the opportunity to seek Jesus Christ as their Savior or learn about it. And yes, everybody will have that opportunity. I'm like, well, yeah, I've heard of missionaries, but so let's say there's this little village 100 miles south of the Taj Mahal, like nobody's ever heard of. They still get their freaking water down at the river, whatever. So the missionary comes by, some hippie dude, he's got his Bible, whatever. He's going to spend one night trying to tell the village in India, in northern India, about Jesus. So in one night, he's got to move on to the next town. He's a missionary. He's just in sandals, right? So in one night, they're going to abandon the 2,000 years of all the religions and their rituals that their ancestors passed down. And she was like, well, that would be their opportunity to accept Christ. Guys, I hear you yelling at me. Well, Matt, that's not the best answer either. Well, I've been going back and forth with this with people for a long time. No one, you guys included, has ever given me a good answer to these common sense questions. I mentioned earlier there have a lot of other issues as well. While I'll never be in any way what you would call religious, I see the various religions have been fighting amongst themselves and with each other since basically the beginning of time. Look how many different flavors and choices there are just inside the Christian ice cream shop. I mean, the Mormons likely believe that they're the only one in good standing with God. The Protestants think the Catholics are going to hell. I mean, do you realize how many tens of millions of gallons of blood have been spilled in his name over who's right and who's wrong in that argument? And that's not at all, shouldn't be taken into consideration as to whether religion itself is just or unjust. The thousands of years of killing each other, I should just forget about that? The most blood has actually been spilled by wars inside their own religion than from actually Christians, say, fighting Muslims, for example, in the Crusades. From the Troubles in Northern Ireland to the Sunnis of Iraq fighting the Shias of Iran. Look at the blood feud, which has been the religions of the human being, and infighting inside generally consider the same religion. And man, the human, thinks himself a higher form of life than the eagle that sails over the battlefield looking down at the blood and guts spilled over trying to promote the only one God that's right. I assure you, the eagle sees the piles of bodies below, killed in the name of promoting their own God over the other, and the eagle says, what a bunch of fuckheads. Now, I know the Troubles in Belfast wasn't just about Catholic versus Protestant. There's a lot of other factors. I know that, but it was a factor. Look, you may think differently, the Christians that are here, the religious that are here, but the society generally says to me this. So let me get this straight. This is what it generally has been presented to me, of course. All of existence comes down to picking the right one, to picking the right religion. One ice cream flavor over here is called Catholic Cocoa Cream. It's shipped in a yellow cardboard tub, which is shaped like the Holy Grail. Of course, everybody thinks their religion is the right one, and everyone else is screwed by having picked the wrong one. Does that make any sense? In some religions, you can still pick right and end up a loser. Say if you don't give them enough of your money. In this place, money is a physical representation of energy. What did the Mormon church do in the old days when people did not pay their 10% of income to the church? I hear it got ugly. Yeah, they demanded 10% of all the money a person took in annually. Today it's said that it's only a guideline and optional. Yeah, sure it is. See how your Salt Lake City auto insurance business does if you stop sending in your 10%. Choose to cut it back to 4%. See what happens. A man in 1995, I hear, sent a letter to Salt Lake City. He said, please find enclosed only 4% of my income this year. You see, I'm saving up to buy a Cadillac. Well, his business, for some unknown reason, started to go bad. A man I heard in 1946 sent a letter, it said, into Salt Lake that said, I'm confused, good sirs. Is that 10% before taxes or after federal taxes? In 1946, he said, it makes a big difference because FDR just pushed my tax bracket up to 85%. This isn't a joke. Woodrow Wilson started what FDR finished, with the top tax bracket, at least for a while, hovering around 90%. So that letter to Salt Lake was very appropriate. Before, after taxes to that guy was like 50 grand. Honestly, I understand why people turn to religion and the big churches. There's a massive spiritual void this reality creates in people, and society really gives them nowhere else to go. People have been intentionally confused their entire life because nothing in culture is designed to answer their most important questions or fill this spiritual void. They've been brainwashed from day one not to look for the answers inside themselves. They search outward and eventually find a church, mosque, synagogue, or that place Tom Cruise visits in West Hollywood to give them the answer. They go for a few years and sit in the pews, but then they get confused again that they don't feel complete. Many people don't. If you do, I can't speak for everyone. I think everybody that sits in the pews of every Catholic church just feels wonderfully complete, or most of them going through the motions. I'm not talking specifically about you, in general. Now, you, the Christians that are here. It's natural for real people to develop a spiritual sense of self and then search for it, especially as they get older. Deep down in the subconscious, many sense what they really are. They may feel their true nature poke out from time to time. When their incorporeal self shows itself, it's there waiting for them in society. The big religious infrastructure is then there waiting for them in society. Every single big university in the West has a series of comparative religion classes that they offer. Now, I assure you, there ain't one son of a bitch undergraduate who ever came out of that class spiritually satisfied. Every spring, about 200,000 students across the entire West say, I'm more fucking confused now than before the class started. And then the friend says, well, what'd you get? I got an A. Who cares then? My grandfather was born in 1912. At around age 60, he turned to the Catholic Church to fill his own spiritual void that popped up when the world got quiet for him after he retired from U.S. Steel. He simply looked around at the rest of our family and followed along with what they did, the Catholic Church. He was a very spiritual man and the opposite of an atheist long before he joined the church. He would say to us, "Look at your hand here. Look how it works. Look how amazing the fingers are. How incredible this human body is. There's no way this hand and arm simply evolved from blades of grass or a constipated marmot." He didn't say that. That's my touch. He said, some sort of God must have been responsible for this incredible body. That's spiritual in general, without a tag put on it or a denomination. My grandfather was a real person for sure, but he was deceived to look for answers in the traps put forth by society, in my opinion, in the form of massive religious infrastructure. I'm sure the process that my grandfather went through is the same as hundreds of millions of people have gone through in the West in terms of finding the church that they eventually end up with. So while my grandfather was working for U.S. Steel in the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, okay, busy, just like everybody, 2 weeks vacation, doesn't have time to think about spiritual stuff, 3 kids, grandkids, etc., the whole thing. No church, whatever, still a Catholic because the whole family's a Catholic, but just going through the motions. Then what happens? Retirement, and it's the old classic retirement. It's the putting out the person to pasture with the pension, the retirement party. I've showed you in a video before. I still have the old cheap gold watch that he was given at the retirement party, just as depressing as the Jack Nicholson movie About Schmidt that used to exist. Go watch About Schmidt, where he's like given that classic retirement, put out to pasture. No more, not needed anymore. My grandfather had that, was one of the last generations to have this whole one company, pension, retirement. Then what happens? The world then gets quiet. And then the spiritual nature starts to come out. And there's a huge hole and void in people that needs to be filled. And all he could do is go seek out the Catholic Church to fill that void. And you know what I'll say? That the massive religious infrastructure exists for this reason, to snatch people up and to suppress any alternative viewpoints, like some of the things we talk about here. If you ask me about the original source of all creation or the original or one God, I have no idea what or who that is. It's too big and too distant to ponder. I don't spend any time on it. It's clear to me that if that exists, it doesn't want us spending time on it. It wants us on our own personal spiritual journey. There's a difference, not a ticket to way out through worship. Okay, 2 different processes. How can I possibly speak about a one creator God? I can only examine our predicament. To me, we're not meant to know the source of all creation while we are here. Doesn't that make sense? So it's going to put us in this distant place, cut off from everything, a confusing world, horror show, assholes, creeps. But this is the place where we're supposed to know God. This is the place where we're supposed to know ourselves. It's a difference. The mystery of this world, what it is, the mystery of death being such a huge part of the life experience. I think it's pretty obvious. If we were meant to know and fully understand original God, original source of all creation, and we're meant to know that while we're on this earth and going through this experience, then we would know it. The humongous Mount Everest mystery of it wouldn't be here. Quote, man collectively believes that we know the Creator from stories about men and experiences of people that lived thousands of years ago, where the records of these stories are held solely in the hands of the biggest creeps who ever existed, who are believed by the religious themselves to be some sorts of acolytes of Satan. In the email to me that said I was possessed, I was implored to read the Bible. And I would say back to them, you mean the book that was not in the hands of any real people for almost 1,800 years and was kept in layaway by the servants of Satan? I just don't understand this. I can never get a good answer on it, inside or outside of our community. And it's worse inside of our community in this one regard, because people on the street, they'll admit, yeah, Matt, the kings and queens and emperors, they kept the Bible away from the regular people for maybe it was 1,700 years. Does it matter? Whatever. If it was more than 50, that's kind of a problem. 1,700 years, whatever it might be. But the people on the street, they kind of like kings and queens. They went to the queen's funeral. They went to or they stood outside for King Charles' coronation. They generally think, well, these kings and queens, they're eccentric, and we hear the stories of Catherine the Great and the horse and all that, but they're generally just trying to do the best they can, and they certainly might care about their people. The people in our community here, we see the dark reality. We see the puppet players of Satan, the Christians here. We see that these kings and queens and emperors were never on the side of the people. It's more of an issue in our community. So, but you would still agree or admit that they were holding the Bible for 1,700 years. These lowest of the lows, Ponder, we don't even know what they are in terms of the spiritual incarnation they are. But somehow, when the Bible came out the other side, it was in the intact Word of God. I don't understand this. Okay, I've never been given a good explanation. We've done these classroom exercises. I remember 3rd or 4th grade. You whisper to the first person behind you, the red dog went into the greenhouse. And by the time it's all the way around one classroom, it's like the green 3-headed devil dog slept under the chicken. It's all screwed up. That's one classroom. But 1,700 years ago, the Bible was held in layaway by the evilest group to ever exist, and it came out the other side, the true Word of God. And then the person that's telling me I'm possessed is a gigantic Mandela effect person. They've documented 1,000 potential changes to the King James Bible. But Matt, I should read the Bible. It's the Word of God. Been held in layaway by creeps for 1,700 years and Mandela affected, but it's the Word of God. This is absolute lunacy to me. I will respectfully look to your comments to see where I'm going wrong. Okay, back to the main point. In this lifetime, what did Jack Nicholson say in The Departed? No ticky, no laundry. In this country, in this lifetime, it's important to do the spiritual work for ourselves. Is that important to know God in this place where it seems like we were intentionally separated from God with the mind wipe? Okay, enough said. The most important part is the work. The most important question associated with that is, what is this life for, and how can it serve my whole, W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E? All I can do is look around and see where I am right now. My job is to use this earthly place as a training gym on a personal spiritual journey, not make guesses about God and original creation. Matt, aren't you worried that if you're getting this wrong, basically you're pissing him off? If you're getting it wrong, don't you think there's some serious consequences? Shouldn't you err on the other side? He may be taking offense. No, I don't think he would take offense, even if it is the God on high and in a way even a Christian describes it. I don't think he would take offense. There's all these people down here, mostly Christians, that are saying, you need to know God, you need to do this. To know Jesus, you need to know. It was about knowing God, knowing Jesus. He may say, I'm not speaking for God. This isn't blasphemy. It's just a possibility. He may say to these people, look around this place that I designed. He may say, you're not meant to know me in that place. Come in, no information, complete mind wipe, a bunch of creeps trying to distract you from your mission. Everything here is a deception. Even a lot of the religious infrastructure, a lot of charlatans and Joel Ovaltines and all that stuff, the scandals of the Catholic Church. He might say to you or to these people, you weren't meant to know me in that place. That's why it's so isolated. There's so many mysteries, the mysteries of death. It seems like we're alone in the universe, in this huge cosmos. But say the last thing you were meant to do in that place is know me. God may say, you were meant to have an experience that should be guided, say, by the principles of worshiping me. To me, it's likely no one is meant to know God. That's the word that keeps being used. Know God, know Jesus. No one is meant to know ultimate creation in this place because it's apparent, just look around, that the creator of this place would have the power to be better known here if he wanted to be better known here. I think he would look at the thousands of religious sects all over the world, the wars, pedo scandals, massive infrastructures, giant cathedrals. I think, quote, he would be quite disgusted. If I'm wrong in all of this for not choosing the Christian God, I would expect him to actually understand my position. You didn't need to pick a religion before you were born, did you? So why do we need to pick one now? What was your religion before you were born? Raise your hand if you were a Catholic before you entered the womb. Maybe the Pope kicked your spirit down the slide, the earthly slide, like the foot of Santa Claus, like Ralphie got in A Christmas Story. If Jesus knew you before you were born, as stated in the Bible, then what is a Muslim today? I'm no expert on this, but I'm pretty sure the big religions hardly ever address before birth. Shouldn't an understanding of what you were before this life be extremely important in every single religion? A Christian may point me to a few vague passages in the Bible, like before Jesus put you in the womb, Jesus knew you before you were born. It's all vague, it's cryptic, and what does that tell me? Nothing, honey. Again, the topic should be extremely important. There should be 10 pages of it in the Bible, not just a few vague references or cryptic passages. I believe through and through that you and I existed before this incarnation. I believe there is at least a part of me that always has existed, and that part is not fully here inside this bozo show. So punishment or reward for how this life is lived only makes sense if you did not exist before conception, right? I'll say that again. Punishment or reward for how this life is lived only makes sense if you did not exist before conception. Everybody, no matter what their religion, right now needs to get in touch with their inner knowing and sense, was I created out of nothingness when I came out of the womb, or did I exist before I was born? I mean, you can't go through life without having an understanding of what you believe in this area. Why would there be a punishment or reward for how this life is lived if you existed for 1 trillion years before this life? If a Christian believes she or he is a new creation, say literally from the rib of Adam in terms of a woman, then what does the Jesus knew you before you were born mean from the Bible? If as a Christian you're confident you existed before birth, then why would you risk all of eternity coming into this bozo show where you could potentially get it wrong and then have to pay an eternal price? Matt, go back to Genesis 1, you idiot. They were cast out. Fallen creatures, Adam and Eve, the serpent. Okay, fine. It's in the New Testament. It says Jesus knew you before you were born. I'm aware of Genesis 1. If they're inconsistent, don't blame me. When in doubt, I will employ common sense and inner knowing, and only one thing makes sense to me here. If I'm confident I will exist after this life eternally, then I am confident that I existed before this life. You and I believe, came here for a reason. I think this material plane and this BO and all the things we experience here is a unique thing that we can't get from where we originally came from. So whatever it may be, why are you here? Find the reason and just do it. This is not complicated. Society artificially makes it complicated, so you feel the need to turn to its gigantic religious infrastructure for answers. This is not bowing down to the no consequences people either. If part of you agreed to come here to Earth and you don't do the work, then by definition, if you don't do the work and don't have the experience, and you're not giving that to the part of you that's not here potentially, then by definition, that's a consequence. What motivates your friends and motivates your family during their lives? Are most people around you concerned with the spiritual aspect of themselves and what that part needs to achieve in their life? Are your friends and family making decisions to benefit the part here and the part not here jointly? Of course not. Most people don't even consider that the other part of them even exists. People do what they do in this life only to serve one arm of the Vitruvian Man. They scramble for the petty rewards of earth that they can amass now. They work to satisfy ego and to put notches in their belt. They crave a job promotion, a second car. They crave to be whacked off in a broom closet. In the case of actors, they work hard in their profession to one day be handed the golden phallus of Osiris so they can be complete. It's absurd to put so much stock and importance in a tiny lifetime of flesh that goes by like that. I'm not running down the importance of this life. This experience is very valuable, but see it for what it is. At this point, you and I see through the trick. Now, I personally want to do what I'm called to do here. The work I'm supposed to, and I'm not talking a YouTube channel. I mean, every day, doing what my spiritual self wants me to be doing here, to benefit the whole of me, mind, body, spirit, WHOLE. It's not complicated. I'll smell the roses, I'll watch some college football. I'll work on myself, dropping fear, dropping chains, recognizing tricks like the all-caps straw man, doing all that, keeping my own energy, not giving it away, laughing at the tricksters. Then I'll get the heck out of here. It's not that complicated. There's not much time in this tiny life to do anything that's much more than that, other than this simple work. What to do in life is only complicated to those who are under the spell of the trick. Once the fog clears and the trick no longer works on you, it's easy to determine what your spiritual self requires of you. There are clues all around for those who have become lucid in this fashion and who have unplugged the fog machine. 2 paths diverge in a woods, or 2 roads, or whatever it is. I chose the one not chosen by Jeff Bezos. All these clues all around us, like the Robert Frost poem, exist for a reason. What I call the minions here on earth are likely, as I've said many times, not the same spiritual entity that you are. Their job is to help build a more elaborate escape room here and collect money from those who play and are fooled by their tricks. The minions are not trying to solve the big puzzle, as we are. They're role players. Maybe the minions and NPCs have to build large corporate legacies and fake charitable foundations that will be around 1,000 years because that is the closest thing they can get to the immortality they seek. You and I don't need to leave massive infrastructures behind to craft a bogus immortality through philanthropy. We have the real thing. We have real immortality. We care not to have our head displayed as a marble bust at Faber College. This is a repeating theme with the minions. They talk about legacies and what will be left to their heirs, like what is shown in that disturbing HBO show Succession. This repeating minion behavior goes back to time immemorial. Agamemnon convinced Achilles that the primary reason to fight the Trojan War was so his name would live on forever. As a real person like you and me, this is absurd to us. We say, who gives a shit about our legacy or name living on forever, having our bust displayed proudly at Faber College, or at Penn State, it was the Schmiel College of Business Administration. You spend enough money, you get to put your name on the business college. Real people knowing the sense of their immortality, we don't give a shit about that stuff. Do you care one bit about your reputation or whatever will live on in this world after your death? Well, if you have kids, you want your kids to know you. You know what I'm talking about. Putting our name on buildings, who cares? I'm here for myself. It's not selfish. My spiritual whole, a personal spiritual journey. I'm here to do the work right now. We don't have the same goals as minions like Achilles because we know the real us lives on, no matter what. This is why we don't care about large gravestones either. What a waste of money that shit is. It's like a $15,000 bird poop stand shaped as an Egyptian obelisk, which is the dick. This life, from a cosmic perspective, is a trivial 80 years or so. That ain't shit. If you back up far enough and look back, your life is no longer than one of those mayfly bugs that live for a day. With the right perspective, if you go back far enough, your life is no different than that bug that lives for a single day. I'm not joking. As we just discussed, no spirit would come into this one-day existence if the stakes were as high as the big religions say, with punitive punishments. That would be like agreeing to buy a scratch-off game at a beer store where on the front of it says you could win $10, and the fine print on the back says if you don't get the right numbers in your scratch-off game, then you will need to spend an eternity sexually satisfying Roseanne Barr. Now, I don't play scratch-off lottery games, but if I did, that particular game would not appeal to me. In Pennsylvania, we have the obnoxious Gus, the second most famous groundhog in PA. He talks like this, "Keep on scratching." Ugh. He peddles his scratch-off games for the state lottery. Now, most people in Pennsylvania hope that the mascot Gus gets hit by a tractor trailer. Quick explanation for Australians. The Groundhog Day, everybody's heard of that around the world, mostly because of the Bill Murray thing. It's centered in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. The groundhog is Punxsutawney Phil, so that would make him the most famous groundhog in Pennsylvania. So Gus, that peddles his scratch-off games, would be the second most famous because nobody's going to be more famous than Phil after especially that scene in Bill Murray when he put the damn thing on his lap and they went over the cliff in the truck. Sorry, let's take a moment and summarize. Real people, via their soul and spirit, in my opinion, existed before birth. That same aspect will exist after death. I don't think it's complicated. You just get in touch with your inner knowing, then look around to reality itself. Everything here points to that. I don't need massive chain of Gothic cathedrals all over the world to tell me what my inner knowing can tell me in about 5 seconds. I think all the religions that present their scary punishments, whether it be hell or... I just recently learned about the Jewish is it Sheol? I don't even know how to pronounce it. I think it's all a bunch of bullcrap. Their scary punishments are of man, okay? This Jewish Sheol, whatever that sounds worse than almost anything else. That's a real effed up place. I ain't even going to look into it anymore. It scares me. I want to be able to sleep at night. But I don't believe none of these scary stories. I'm sorry. What is 10 million tons of stony Catholic cathedrals for if the message is simple? If the message is simple, that middleman is not needed. If something is going out of its way to build a complicated story with massive infrastructure topped off with incense rituals and whatever else the Pope wants to present to you, to me, it's to facilitate a trick. Personal story. Every single time my father has gone into a gigantic cathedral or religious structure, he's said to me afterwards, I got a strong spiritual feeling when I was inside. Yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you felt that way. That's what it's designed to do. It's a trick. It works on him. Why would God be in that massive, beautiful place alone and not in the weed-covered field next door? Matt, God don't roll like that. You ain't going to feel his presence, sucker, in some cheap-ass building or a field. Impressive buildings with all the stained glass obviously creates a false sense of spirituality. That successfully then links spirituality to the infrastructure itself, which is history's very first application, it seems like, of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming or whatever it's called, with the first book that talked or introduced NLP in the 70s called something to do with magic. I'm not joking. It's just NLP. That's why my father, he went into the damn, what is it called? My father went into the damn Blue Mosque. He went to Istanbul a long time ago, and he's like, I had an incredible spiritual experience. He says it about all the big Catholic churches, and it doesn't matter what religion. It links the experience to the building itself. He's a victim of NLP. I'm not joking. Dad doesn't care about differentiating between religions at all. It's just the size of the building, whether it be to Dad Muhammad, Jesus, Krishna, it don't matter. All that matters is the 4,000 tons of stone that brings in the Holy Ghosts. It's spiritual bliss through stonework with beautiful accents. No matter what the denomination it is, it moves Dad if the building's right. Seeking a ticket to heaven through the Catholic Church and its massive infrastructure is like thinking it's necessary to go all the way to the Three Gorges Dam to fill a cup of water. A relationship with God should be very simple, but I'm sorry for just implying some common sense. I must just be a loon. Fill the cup yourself. You don't need to go to no Three Gorges Dam. Fill it yourself. You don't need something that puts out 400 million gallons a second. What's all that fancy infrastructure for? They need you to believe all of it is spiritually necessary. But why would it be? It screams, you can't do it yourself. Look at all that we have here. You need us, little asshole. Just take a look at our cathedrals and how important we are. Here's a question for the Vatican, particularly to the College of Cardinals. The entire College of Cardinals, if they're listening to the words coming out of my mouth. Has anybody there ever read the Bible? Anybody? Just raise your hand. And I don't remember. Look, I haven't read all of it, but I don't remember, like, there's certain parts where it says, the God or Jesus in the New Testament says, thou must need very impressive buildings. I never came across that part. Maybe there should be another commandment added, the 10 Commandments. Maybe it can become 11, like you can add addendums or amendments onto the end of the U.S. Constitution. I'll suggest an 11th if you want to adopt this. Those in the College of Cardinals listening to me, here we go. Thou must never seek God directly under your favorite tree. Instead, thou must knowest God only by way of a billion-dollar infrastructure with beautiful buildings that has replaced its healing pipe organs with electronic AI beats. One of the major keys to life is to see that there's a trick being played here on earth and to realize what we came here to do for ourselves. It's a few simple sentences. The goal is to leave the trick behind and do the work using all the tools that this reality affords us. billions of tons of fancy stonework and cathedrals that you can fly helicopters around inside is part of the trick. Thanks for listening.